And so what's actually at stake anyway, to sort of respond to the criticism that I've, intellectual, healthy debate, but criticism that I've encountered in the last several weeks after I've shared my views, is that, oh, no, this is just a reversion to elements of the old conservatism. Actually, I view it the other way around. If you really trace the history here, neoconservatism was an evolution from an older version of conservatism that was opposed to the rise of the American nanny state. So here you got to really understand the history. A lot of the regulatory state and the nanny state and the entitlement state and the muscular form of government, that came out of Lyndon Johnson's Great Society. This actually came out in last week's episode of the podcast, which if you haven't checked it out, I encourage you to, was my conversation with Christopher Caldwell. He's the author of a great book called The Age of Entitlement. But he's laid out the way in which the 1960s, according to him, with the Great Society under Lyndon Johnson, comprised effectively a kind of second constitutional convention in America, a second kind of rebargaining of what our actual rights and substantive negative rights, but also positive rights are as Americans in ways that come into tension with the original Constitution, including it up to the First and 14th Amendments. But since then, you traded off your sovereignty for stuff. You got a bunch of stuff, Medicaid, welfare, et cetera, but you got a regulatory state that impeded your sovereignty since then. That was the original sin, as he sees it, and I agree with this, in the 1960s. The conservative response to that was to say that we want to shut down that entitlement state, that regulatory state, that entire nanny state. That used to be the classical conservative response, was to say that we don't want to replace this left-wing nanny state with a right-wing nanny state. It would be unthinkable. It wouldn't even make sense. There's no such thing as a right-wing nanny state. It's an oxymoron on its own terms in this classical 1960s, 1970s conservative response. But that was where it began. The neoconservatives, actually, you want to talk about neocons,